And I just love being between China and the US. To me, it's like the most invigorating thing ever.
Well, then you are like born to be an entrepreneur if that much moving around and action like excites you and energizes you.
Yeah, I really like it. I mean, the two countries are so different, and every time I go to one of them, I get so much inspiration. I think like, oh, I wish I could bring this idea back to China, or, oh, I wish I could bring this idea to America.
You know, they say women shouldn't be bossy.
We're out here reclaiming that word. What's so wrong with being the boss? Bossy.
Welcome back to another episode of Bossy. I am one of your hosts, Katie Gaddy Tassan, and this week we are shaking things up because Tara wasn't able to make it today, so I am here remotely, as you can see, and outside of our purple studio, to interview entrepreneur and author Sara Jane Ho. Sara Jane is the founder of China's first etiquette school, Institute Sarita, and the daytime Emmy-nominated Mind Your Manners series on Netflix, which is a series that's in the same vein as a show like Queer Eye or Marie Kondo. It's basically a makeover style show, and in it she meets with different people and she helps them improve their lives through, what else, etiquette. Her book functions in a similar way. It's kind of a continuation of the show, and it takes awkward situations that occur in everyday life, everything from dating to work to friendships, and it teaches you how to navigate them by diffusing the awkwardness. This interview was an interesting one because Sara has this unifying lens through which she views her several business ventures, some of which, like her new female reproductive health brand, feel kind of topically unrelated to her other lines of business, at least on the surface level. So that lens, which is effectively mingling Eastern and Western culture, bringing the West to the East and vice versa, it's kind of the connective tissue between the companies that you're going to hear us talk about today. And on a personal level, this was an interesting interview for me because there are some areas where Sara Jane and I actually don't really see philosophically eye to eye. I think part of this might be some of the cultural norms that she is bridging with her businesses. So, for example, there's a point in the conversation where she mentions how there is an anti-aging element to her new business, how all women want to anti-age. And if you're familiar with my work, you know that I am actually a pretty staunch critic of the idea that women should strive to, quote, anti-age. But that is the beauty of a show like this one. And getting to talk to entrepreneurs who are building businesses that address different markets and offer different belief systems than my own or Tara's. Our diversity of opinion and cultural experiences inform the way that we approach business, and your unique collection of experiences and beliefs might be what gives you an edge in your own business. So, with that being said, please enjoy this conversation with Sara Jane Ho. When we talk about etiquette, or these, we'll call them hidden rules, rather, I think about that in the context of entrepreneurship. We did an episode a couple months ago where there was a conversation that we had about kind of the importance of following up and how, unless someone kind of explicitly told you that, it might take you some time as you're getting your sea legs and becoming a more seasoned entrepreneur to realize that persistence, or if someone helps you out, that you kind of need to follow up with them and make sure that you're thanking them appropriately, and that there are all these kind of unwritten rules. And I'm curious if for you as an entrepreneur and founder, 12 years in, who is trafficking in the world of etiquette and teaching the unspoken rules, are there any rules that you find yourself always breaking as an entrepreneur? Is there any rule of etiquette that you find yourself frequently choosing to, go around or to, quote, disobey?
Well, you know what's funny? The sort of most public one that I disobeyed was when my Netflix show had just come out and New York Times did a style profile on me, and they chose the title, "The Etiquette Guru Who Broke Up with Her Boyfriend Over Text." And of course it's clickbait. I mean, they trailed me for a couple of days and I said so many things, and they take that one thing and make it the title. And when I saw it, I thought, I cringed. So I think as people, we have to embrace these uncomfortable truths. That also led me to start my beauty brand, my traditional Chinese medicine intimate wellness brand, Antivota, which in Roman mythology means goddess of the future. Because I just thought, well, you know what? I want to embrace these uncomfortable truths where people are telling us you shouldn't care about aging. Anti-aging is a dirty word now. But actually, we do. Every single woman I know cares about how she's aging. People say you shouldn't clean your vaginas because they're self-cleansing. But you know what? Your vulva, you should clean it just like you clean every other part of your body. So I feel like we should be free to care and to own these uncomfortable truths.
I definitely want to come back and ask you some questions about this new business and these some of the things you just mentioned, particularly anti-aging. I want to press on that a little bit more. But before I do, there was something else while we're still talking about the book. I want to get into some of your takes about social media etiquette. Sometimes the advice for how to navigate uncomfortable conversations or uncomfortable interactions on social media or really in business is to avoid it, ignore it, don't answer the troll. Or if someone is, not fulfilling expectations, to find a way to sugarcoat that delivery, right? And I think that for me in business, and I guess in both the front facing and the behind the scenes part of it, I really value directness. And I think sometimes etiquette can feel like a bit of a diversion from that. So in your mind, when you think of kind of like your approach to etiquette online, or online manners on social media, authenticity is such a currency, right? So is relatability. These are things that it almost is like trite to say it outright, because it's just all you hear as far as the guidance for like how to build an online audience or become a persona online. And I'm curious if you see a focus on like a narrow set of guidelines or prescriptive behavior for how to engage online as somehow undermining of that value, or is it protective of it? I'm trying to make sense of whether or not having like a standard operating procedure for like, oh, I never respond to trolls, or I always, handle myself or comport myself in this specific way, if that is good or bad ultimately for, quote, authenticity online.
Yeah. I always say there is no right or wrong when it comes to etiquette. Etiquette is very contextual. So it depends on who you're with, what culture you're in, and what the context is. In terms of online, I say a general rule is, so, as long as there's people for you, there'll be people against you. And the same as offline and the same as online. It's just that online you can see it, right? Because those words are in black and white. And I remember when I opened my finishing school in 2012 in Beijing, I got a lot of organic press attention and a lot of criticism. And people online would say, oh, and these are on Chinese social media. And I was fuming. I thought, well, these people aren't even bothering to look at my website or really understand what my course is about. And my dad said, this is yin and yang. So long as people like you, there'll be people who dislike you. And it doesn't matter. You just have to be prepared for that. And the thing is that when there are negative comments, usually it's more a reflection of the people who leave those comments. It's a reflection of those people. And usually they're unhappy people. And I think it's important to not give attention to that. Unless, let's say you were tone deaf and made an insensitive comment about something very publicly and now people are upset. Well, in that case, I also like to look within, right? Look within, was I tone deaf? Maybe I go to my closest advisors and then think about, do I owe an apology? So it's very, very contextual.
Yeah, I think in my case with the type of content that I will be sharing and posting on social media, I find that sometimes, depending on the context, it does make for a richer experience for viewers to see a video and then go into the comment section and see this sort of lively discourse between someone who might be coming in hot, which to your point, like as long as there are people that really like your message, there is a strong polarity. So there will also be people who are really, really opposed. And some of that opposition expresses themselves in a sometimes unkind or sometimes just explicitly mean way. I don't always engage with the mean stuff, but every once in a while, there will be an opportunity where you can almost draw someone in. They come in with some hot takes, some fallacy, some misconception, and you can almost refute it publicly or expose publicly in the comment section the gap or the flaw in the logic, or, you know, I don't want to say use their own words against them, but kind of in some cases. And I sometimes find that doing that can be a really strategic way to engage with a naysayer, as opposed to like the tit for tat going back and forth, or, you know, allowing it to affect your mental health, which it sounds like you have probably experienced before with this situation that you were just describing.
You know, I think we can look at the masters of social media and love them or hate them. It's the Kardashians. And if you look at things that they post and you look at the comments, there are people that love them and people that hate them. They leave them there. They don't even remove them. They don't hide them. And they just don't give attention to them.
Okay, so let's talk Ante Vorta. So I have to admit, like, talking to you about etiquette and then moments later hearing you use the word vulva, I was like, whoa, like I was not expecting that. So first ever intimate wellness brand inspired by traditional Chinese medicine and designed to help women with their reproductive health. I'm curious, where did the idea come from? Like, can you tell me more about the origin of how you went from kind of this first venture that you have and then expanded into this whole other arena? Because it does feel like it does feel quite different. And even in the first case, it sounds like the initial, your initial business, your initial product was, we'll say, digital or education, or it's an idea, right? It's a philosophy. It's a way of being that you're selling, as opposed to, in this case, this is a physical product. So a completely different ball game, entrepreneurially. I'm curious kind of the origin of how that came to be.
I feel that everything I've done in my career is across two realms. The first is East meets West, and the second is helping women move through the world with confidence. So when you think about it that way, it's actually it can translate into a lot of different things. And, you know, with etiquette school was bringing a bit of West into the East. With my Netflix show, it was actually both. I brought out a lot of Eastern concepts as well as Western concepts. I had American students as well as Chinese students on my etiquette show. As part of my makeover for my students, I would take them to a traditional Chinese medicine doctor. I would feng shui their house for them, just because it's something I grew up with in Hong Kong. I grew up with herbal remedies, with acupuncture, with cupping, with bone setting, with feng shui. So it's just innate to me. When I go to a friend's house, I'm just immediately giving them little feng shui tips. And I didn't anticipate that my Western audience really leaned into that. And I was getting a lot of direct messages on Instagram from people saying, your show opened my eyes to Chinese culture. Please recommend a TCM, a traditional Chinese medicine doctor, just like the one in the show. I live in Orlando, Florida. And I was like, huh. And I'd get exactly the same requests from people living in Mexico, Poland, India, everywhere, mostly America.
Interesting.
So I thought, this is very interesting. And I was trying to think of also what I could do that could reach people on a bigger scale that was still in line with East meets West and helping women move through the world with confidence. And I have a friend, Annie, who's my co-founder for Ante Vorta. Her family business is traditional Chinese medicine. We stayed very good friends because we would always be sharing our TCM tips and tricks and each other's practitioners. And so one day when we were sitting down and brainstorming, and by the way, she got her PhD in neuroscience. So she's really all about life sciences. And her grandpa founded a traditional Chinese medicine clinic in Taiwan in the 1940s that is still operating to this day by her cousins.
Wow.
So, with all these together we were thinking, how can we take what makes us happy and healthy and share it with the rest of the world? In traditional Chinese medicine, a woman's health begins in her ovaries, your female reproductive health. And in fact, your period is a report card of your health. Are you regular? Do you have blood clots? Are you heavy or light flow? Are you skipping periods? Or maybe you're going into early menopause, right? All these issues. Are you having lower back pain when your period comes? So for us, we're very passionate about bringing traditional Chinese medicine to the rest of the world, and beginning from the ovaries and from the feminine health. And that's why Eastern medicine is about prevention. Western medicine is about treatment.
Yeah.
I think that after COVID, a lot of Americans are much more interested and understanding of prevention. And our 4 SKUs, which I'm holding in my hand, an intimate wipe. We have a cleansing gel, and we have a intimate spray in 2 different sizes. So 4 SKUs. This is our daily care bundle. So it's a daily hygiene bundle that helps prevent odor irritation, dryness. And so that's what we launched with this year.
So fresh out the gate. How new? Like
2 months.
In 2 months? Okay, wow. Well, it sounds like, I was wondering if it was a harder sell to sell traditional Chinese medicine to a Western audience who may not have the context, or will say the same framing of health, but it sounds like people have kind of been hungry for it, and that it was actually outreach from people in your Western audience that prompted you to want to go on this journey.
Oh yeah, and it was very surprising to me that as I looked more into it, and I do acupuncture I do it twice a week, no matter what city I'm in. And when I began coming more to the States and to New York, I began looking for my, local acupuncture clinic, my Chinese massage clinic. And I realized, and a lot of my friends who are American, who've never been to China before, they were telling me, oh yeah, here, try some Chinese tea. It's from my Chinese doctor. Oh yeah, I do acupuncture too. And I was like, wait, fascinating. What's going on? And I realized that actually a lot of my American friends are doing acupuncture, mainly for fertility, mental health, so needles in the head, right? So helping with sleep and anxiety, and then also for digestion, and that's needles in the tummy area.
Oh, wow.
It's very interesting. And I also think that the success of Korean beauty, K-beauty, has led the American customer to be receptive to Asian beauty.
Yeah. Yeah, that definitely makes sense. So, okay, I see. And I like this kind of East meets West, the similarity between the ventures and kind of this lens that you are working through, or that you see the world through, and that you're applying to these different businesses. We have talked on the show before about the importance of a business plan, or maybe the lack thereof. And we read in a previous interview that you had done that you kind of talked about the quote deliberate versus emergent strategy when it comes to building a business. So I'm curious how your strategies have differed between building Institute Sarita and Ante Vorta.
Yes, so at Harvard Business School, I took a course, and the professor then talked about these 2 different strategies. One is, as you said, emergent, and that's the case for a lot of tech companies, right? You have version 1.0, version 2.0, version 3.0, and your strategy emerges as you start the business. And the other one was, it's similar to deliberate, but I forgot the exact name, but it's essentially where your strategy is like perfect before you go and execute it.
Yeah, because we all know how often that happens.
I know. And I feel that a strategy is only as good as the flexibility built into it. So you should have a strategy, but it should be, we're moving all the time. We're adapting, pivoting all the time. We're seeing opportunities and we're grabbing them all the time. With Institute Sarita, that was a real free-for-all. I didn't have a business plan. I did, so I probably did everything that at Harvard Business School they tell you not to do. I did have a to-do list though. And what I was doing, nobody had done it before in China. So that was a very emergent business. With this Anti-Vorta, it was much more, we had a business plan. And even though we were continually updating it and tweaking it, and things did change. We have to find a factory. We ended up moving from our mainland China factory to a Taiwan factory, and we tried a few SKUs. We originally were going to launch with 5. We dropped 1. We kept 4. So those things are always changing. But I would say with Anti-Vorta, it was much more of a deliberate strategy.
Yeah, that makes sense. I actually am curious too with the name, because it's a name that, if I'm correct, comes from Roman mythology, right?
Yes, it means goddess of the future in Roman mythology. And I wanted a name that transcends borders and is more about a concept that can relate to all women all over the world. So with goddess of the future, I wanted this to indicate a more optimistic future to come.
Okay, I want to finish on a fun note. So in a 2013 interview, you mentioned that your role model is Martha Stewart, and I am really curious how that inspiration has influenced the way that you build. Like, has it evolved as you've started a second business and written a book? And just if that still resonates with you.
Yeah, Martha Stewart is an icon. And what she's been able to do in terms of lifestyle and really influencing multiple generations of American women is so inspirational to me, and how she's been able to continually adapt and stay with the times, whether it's by collaborating with Snoop Dogg. I get a lot of inspiration from her. I think that since 2013, there are also a few other role models I look to for inspiration, but absolutely Martha was the original one.
The original muse.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Katie, for having me and for the opportunity.